Hi everyone, my name's Electric Donkey and today we're back on the Python series. So today I did promise that we do a little bit of error validation, so we're just going to get straight into that. I've got all the 4 options open here, because we'll probably go through, we'll definitely start on the first one. We'll probably go through some of the other stuff later on. I'm not entirely sure if we need it for the first one though. Yeah, we'll leave the first one, I think, for the moment. We can leave that one as well. I think this is the one we'll start with. So we'll start with number 3. We're going to do... Whoops, didn't mean to close that down. Some error validation things. And we're just gonna start at the technically most complicated thing. In fact, we'll start on the main file. So if I run this at the moment, we should notice a little problem. So it says here choose an option, and we obviously so far have just put in numbers 1 to 5. What would happen if we put in, say, G, which isn't a number? Well, it crashes. It won't look this nice if you're running it in IDLE or in the console. It'll look horrendous. So this is a problem. We want to work around that somehow, and there's a way we can do that, and it's something called try and except, and I'll talk through what actually happens here. It's the alternative to, I think, try and catch, something like that. In other languages, I forget what it is. Something in catch. And what happens is it tries to run this code in the section. If this errors, then it runs whatever's in the except. So, say like that. So in the event that this errors, instead of showing the error message and instead of crashing, it will run this bit of code. Now, of course, that's all well and good, but if we had the same bit of code in here, then it would still crash, because it would run this and it would just crash. Now, of course, you might also be looking, why is it crashing? Why have we got that problem? Well, it's because we're trying to convert it to an integer here. So it's asking for our input, and then it's converting it to an integer. But if we put in a letter isn't a whole number. It's not a number at all. So we can't convert it, and therefore it errors. So in this case, it'll go onto the except, which will be printing that's not a number. So now if we run this, and put in G, that's not a number. Although, here's where the problem comes. This now doesn't work, because we've not set option. It's not set up properly. And this is where realistically we need to make a few changes to our script. Mainly because even without this try and except, and even if we'll leave it for the moment, if we put in our right numbers, we put in 1, names, enter a name, yeah, we'll just do that. It just stops afterwards. And this is a menu, so in theory we need to keep returning to it, even after our options. So what we're going to do is put a while loop in, not uppercase time, while true, just like that. I went through this before. It's an infinite loop. Another one that I learned that was quite cool is a while 1, because 1 is also true. I think true makes more sense though, so I'm going to keep it as that. So this will now loop infinitely. So if we were to run this now, and we put in 1, we entered some names, it would go back to the menu, and that's brilliant. We're just going to tab that along as well, just so it looks a little bit nicer. One more space, and that's all well and good. It's now looping infinitely, so if we put this and put some names in, we could go back and we could maybe do the random game with 2 players, and player 2 wins, and we go back to the menu, and that's lovely. But what if we put in G? That's now a number. but then what? It's then skipped onto enter the number of players. And I'll talk you through why that's actually happened. If we were to run this the first time, then the option variable doesn't exist. It's not a thing. So if we put in G now, it would just crash because it's trying to ask if it's in the range. Obviously it doesn't exist. So what's happening when we've run it several times is it just takes the one that you've done last time because it's not updated it since. A way we could get around this is resetting the option every time, but we don't really want that to happen because we want this to override it anyway. Only problem is if this errors, it goes into accept and then skips straight past it, and that's where the problem comes. And this is why most of the time when you see a try and accept, you will also see a while loop, another one, just like this, another while true one, and it'll just be around the whole try and accept loop. And this means that it'll infinitely ask us for an option, and if it works, if this try works, well, it will still infinitely loop at the moment, but otherwise it'll print the error message. And what we want to do is, if it's worked, we just want to break like that. Now that'll break us from our while loop and then skip onto this where option will work because we've set it, and we know we've set it successfully because it's not errored and jumped onto the accept bit. And that's a little bit hard to think about, but in effect now if we put in G, that's not a number, it doesn't error, it goes back to us choosing option. And now if we put in 1 and some names and we then put in G, it would say that's not a number, it's not going to go back to 1. So that's how we could go about error validation. There's a little bit more to it, I'll go through that in a minute. I'm just going to explain this once more just because I think it's quite a hard thing to comprehend. So we've got our infinite loop. We're then trying to set option equal to int input. If our input is a string, or not an integer format, so a decimal would also error, then it would print that's not a number. But if it has passed, it immediately goes on to the next line, which will just break from the infinite loop. And that means that here, this will error, this will stay perfectly fine. There is a little bit more to this though. There is error types. Whether I can remember them or not is another matter. The one that I tend to remember is IO error. For some reason. There's a memory error, name error, I think there's a type error. Right. Let's try that then. So this would mean that it's more specific. So if there's some sort of other error, it'll show the error. But if it's a type error, which we can see here, that would make sense, then it won't error. So if we put in G, it has errored. So it's obviously not type, it's a value error, that's the one I was looking for. Value error. You can always just test it because it will tell you. So now if we put in G, that's not a number, but if we were to put something else in, like, I don't know, I don't think there's a thing that works. One of these just sometimes break it. But yeah, if for some reason there was another type of error which wasn't handled properly, then it would immediately skip onto the value error thing. Another thing you can do, you can just keep adding these accepts. It doesn't matter. You could put different types of errors, so it works kind of like an if statement. So in this case, it'll try this. If there's a value error, it'll do this, and if there's any other error, it'll do this. But for the most part, we don't really want this because we want to see that error if it comes up. We don't expect that error to be there, and so we want to handle it properly. So anyway, that was my little summary of error validation. If you like this video, remember to like, subscribe, or what do you guys want to do, and I'll talk to you in the next one.